Hi and welcome to INSAID's Industry Immersion series. In this series, you will meet data scientists from all across the world as they come and discuss what's trending in the data science and AI space. Let's begin today's episode of Industry Immersion with yet another speaker.
Friends, please join hands in welcoming Syam. Syam is an industry veteran. He's currently working at Accenture, and Syam has a pretty vast, not only IT experience, but from the academic side also, he has a very strong experience from the academical background. So Syam is going to be our mentor for today. So Syam, before we actually get into the discussion of the different questions that we have for you, it'll be great, Syam, if you can give us a little brief about yourself, so introduce yourself to the audience. And I'm pretty happy to see close to 200 folks kind of sitting here, and it'll actually increase to 300 in some time. But we all are here to learn something from you. So if you can quickly give us a brief about yourself, then we'll get started with the Q&As.
Sure. And first and foremost, thanks very much for inviting me to this session. It's also a learning experience for me, right? So I think we will learn from each other, right? And as you said, I have about 18 plus years of experience. Within that, about 7 years into data science alone. And as you mentioned, I'm a keen learner, and therefore I have taken a couple of breaks and to pursue my higher studies, right? So that's where I did my MTech as well as MBA. And for the past 7 years, I have been into data science, so I'm still learning. It's a vast field, but hopefully I could share some of my experiences and it would help you to, right, take your journey further. I really look forward to this session. Thank you.
Awesome. I think with knowledge comes in humbleness. So it is good to hear from you, Syam, that after 17 years of experience, you still say, I'm still learning. Because I think, this is something that really defines you as a person, or probably anybody who's learning data science. That data science is such a field that there's no full stop to it. You might keep learning all your life. So great having you here today, Syam. So let's get started with our discussion here. Now, obviously, we got a fair bit idea about your background. Now, what we observe is you have done statistical courses, you have done managerial courses, and you are also an engineer by profession, right? So what really keeps you motivated to keep studying? What is your prima facie? What exactly is the force that helps you kind of telling yourself that, yes, I have to keep studying? What is that one particular reason that you want to keep studying?
Well, as you mentioned, right, the field is vast. And again, the kind of problems that we are trying to solve are not same, right? They require different treatment and different kind of approaches, right? So given that, I know, right, where I stand in terms of my experience and what kind of problems I have solved. And therefore, I also know that there is a lot more to be learned, right? And therefore the passion to solve these problems is what something I would say motivates me. And especially, as you said, in data science field, unlike what probably people have the image, it's a laborious task, okay? Because a lot of time you have to handle data, right? Understanding data itself is a difficult task, and it requires a lot of patience. Okay, so in that context, therefore, passion is very critical, right? Then only we will be able to actually make contributions to this field. And that is why also I keep learning.
Okay. So it's majorly passion driven, right? It's wrong to say that I study because I'm required to study. But rather, if you say that I study because that's my passion, I think that really drives the entire story.
Correct.
Okay. Now, what I'll do is I'll share you a few commonly asked questions, okay? And let's kind of take them one by one. So let me share the questions with you. So the first things first, could you please share us your journey in the data science space? So right from the beginning. So when you were in a totally non-data science field, and then how do you slowly moved into this field, and why did you take that jump? And by the way, when Syam actually moved into this field, probably data science even did not exist properly in India. So he's that old in this field, I would say. He's a very mature person in this field by standards, by current standards. He's been in this field for a very long time. So yes, Syam, so I'll hand it over to you. If you could, let us actually understand what was your reasons for moving up from a totally non-DS field into a DS field, and then how do you carry forward?
Sure. Thanks for asking me this question. Even though it may sound like my self propaganda here, but I would like to drive a couple of points from my experience, right? That is where I think I can contribute to this session. So please don't take it otherwise. Yeah, let me start with the question, right? In terms of why I started, or rather how I started. Okay. Like I said, when I was 11 years old in TCS, and I was into a different field altogether. Okay, I was into engineering services at that point of time, but I felt the need that my growth has kind of stalled, or rather, if I have to move further, then I need to upgrade my skills, right? So that was the motivation for me to take the MBA course. So I took a break, and then I got into MBA. But I have taken a very conscious choice saying that I will not go into, let's say, the IT sales kind of roles or program management kind of roles post my MBA. Okay. So that is the reason why, I had to forego a lot of campus placement opportunities. But luckily, within TCS, then as you said, right, at that point of time, the data science is still evolving, or it's in nascent stages. So a lot of groups were starting their own divisions. Okay, so that is the reason I was confident enough that even if I don't get a campus placement, right, I have a backup. So I took a choice there, and also sort of, I made some sacrifices, right, in terms of my career growth. So I came back to TCS, and I got into the data science field. Okay, and the foundations for my data science actually were laid during that MBA course. I was really got interested into some of the courses like marketing analytics, right, and the statistical courses that were offered there. And I was a quants guy from the beginning. Okay, and that is the reason why even when I started my career, I started into the engineering services. Okay, which is related to the mechanical engineering. So I was
Right.
not a pure IT guy. Right. So that is how I made this progression. But the challenges started after switching, actually, right? When I came back to TCS, the real challenges were even the management were pretty new to this field, right? So everybody was talking about analytics, data science, but nobody has a clue in terms of, right, what needs to be done, or where do they want to go and all. Okay. So that is a reason I also kind of struggled a lot during those initial phases, because I was confused. I was not sure if I made the right choice, right? And I'm pretty sure a lot of guys who are going through this right now will have this kind of experience. That is the reason
Right.
I'm telling all these things. So I spent a lot of time in that phase. And believe me, at one point of time, I almost gave up. Okay, I said, okay, I think nothing is happening. So I want to go back to, let's say, my engineering services field. At least I was experienced, and probably, right, I can grow in that field. So I made an appointment with my boss, and it's very dramatic. Okay, and it really happened. I made an appointment with my boss. I said, right, I wanted to move out. Okay, that is what I wanted to say. But I think my boss sensed it, and luckily, right, a lucky break came at that point of time. During that session, even before I spoke, my boss offered me that TCS is coming up with a special course, okay, in data science, and it was offered by Indian Statistical Institute. Okay, and he said, do you want to go there? Okay, then suddenly, right, I got excited again, right, something to learn new. So I said yes. Okay, give me a try, right? Why waste this opportunity? And that is where I met my future boss. Okay, in that course, right, he was impressed with my, at least the interest and my skill set, and he offered me to take into his group. Okay, that is how I made my transition, and then onwards, I think it was I would say, at least a smooth sail. Okay, so the point is that I wanted to say, yeah, don't lose hope, right? And we have to be patient especially when we are making this transition. I think it's very crucial that, right, you have to be patient and persistent. Okay, and at some point of time, you will get your lucky break. So yeah.
Awesome. So, I know it takes a lot of courage to say that. Yeah, there was a moment where I had thought of quitting. So, friends, I think this is something that we all got to learn from Syam, and especially when somebody of his teacher, his experience, his knowledge really says that that there will be moments of truth where you find it difficult to accept what is happening. Don't let yourself low. Don't feel bad about it. Things may not be rosy always, but it's your consistent effort and your passion that drives you to success. And I think Syam is a true figure for us to follow. So Thank you, Syam. That was a very important insight and a lot to learn from you. So, Syam, the second question that I would go is, as we discussed on your education front, okay, you kind of have pretty deep knowledge in almost, I would say, every aspect: the engineering aspect, the managerial aspect, the data science aspect. And that's very rare occasion to come across a person who holds knowledge or who possesses knowledge in all of these fields. So, considering a lot of people who want to transition into data science, they come from programming field, they are developers, they are architects, a lot of folks who are managers, a lot of folks who are from testing or admin, a lot of folks who are totally from non-tech backgrounds. How do they really start their journey? And considering not everybody might be able to learn as much as you have learned in this period, they might take their own pace and their own time. How would you recommend them that where should they put their focus on? Because they all have different skill sets. So how do they kind of reach to a place where they can be helpful or they can contribute back to the business?
Yeah, sure. So again, one more aspect that we need to consider along with the experience with which they come, right? One is the variety in the experience, but also the number of years of experience. So let us look at these two aspects. So people with, let's say, about less than 9 years of experience, so you will at least have the chance to focus on solution building, okay? But people above, let's say 9 plus and especially 12 plus, let's say, so they have to definitely contribute towards managing the whole solution building activities, right? So in that context, if you look at it, for programmers and developers, I think it should be easy, right? Easy in terms of transitioning. So what I would suggest for these people who would like to actually build the solution hands-on, get hands-on with writing code and all, I think, yeah, definitely having, a breadth of knowledge is important in terms of the technical skills. But statistical programming, or rather statistical analysis, I would recommend for everyone, okay? The reason being that any data science projects, right, at whatever be the phase of execution, you need to have that thinking in mind, right? In terms of hypothesizing or in terms of right, evaluating your results require a lot of statistical analysis, okay? So it is therefore necessary that at least you have a good, decent understanding, conceptual understanding of statistical analysis. So that is a must for everyone. And in terms of technical skills, I think you would be learning a lot of technical aspects in this course. So for developers, I would say that you get hands-on experience in that space, okay? But people who are probably looking at, let's say, architecture, architectural aspects, right? So you need to understand more in terms of what are the systems or the infrastructure that came into picture, right? Especially with the deep learning. So I would say people who would like to get into this architecture domain, so have a good understanding of deep learning, because that is one of the latest right fields, and also it requires a lot of infrastructural elements. So right, you should focus on that. But people who are getting into managerial roles, okay, for them, so the delivery aspects become pretty important, right? In terms of project management, in terms of testing, for example, in terms of productionizing, especially right now, if you see the trend, a lot of organizations are moving from the POC stage to slowly actually deploying the productionizable solutions, right? So this is where I think a lot of experience is required, and people who are experienced in that domain, I think would be definitely required. So people with a lot of experience, right? You should have a broad understanding of the end-to-end solution delivery. Probably you may not know the technical details of each and every right algorithm that you apply, but you should understand the end-to-end flow, right? So that is where I think you should focus on. Yeah, and finally, I think for experienced people, again, how do you explain the results or the solutions to the business users, the layman, right? So the explainability part becomes important. So that is also another aspect I think experienced people should focus on. Yeah, so that's
yeah. So if I were to kind of narrow down on non-tech, so there could be a lot of folks who are planning to get into data science, totally non-tech. They may not be great at coding, but stats is something they have to learn because that's not an option here. So Do you think explainability is their only target, or there are things that they could also think through in terms of not everything to kind of pitch the solution to the customers?
So
So there could be
yeah.
varied roles, right? So I'm just looking at what else roles can they really opt for? Something like analytics, something like pipelining, machine learning. I don't know, but can you help me understand what roles should be they could try to get started at least?
Yeah, so when you say non-tech people, if they have, let's say, business idea or business focus, right? Definitely. So that is one area where you can come up with, business solutions. Basically, developing use cases, identifying use cases. So that's another space I see a lot of people playing a role there. Okay, that's one space. And as you said, definitely analytics is another space. Again, when you say analytics, so we are talking about, let's say, more on descriptive analytics, for example. Okay, this is again where definitely you need to have a domain flavor, obviously, because then only you can define those insights, right? So how do you define the insights which are useful for the end users? Okay, that is where again you can play a role there, right? So these are all some of the aspects. So non-tech people, I would suggest that have develop a good understanding of the business. Okay, so that is where again people can contribute.
Awesome. So yeah. So usually in a project, we'll have a lot of documentation. We'll have a lot of people required who understand the domain well enough, and they can convert the domain knowledge to a knowledge that probably the developers or the data scientists can relate to.
Correct.
So non-tech folks could actually acquire that space. And yes, from the analytical perspective as well, it's good that once you know statistics and once you know domain, both go very hand in hand. And if you are able to kind of use the power of both, you can actually land up in analytical projects as well. Now, obviously, in certain situations, you may have to code out your analytical solutions. In most of the cases, they might use some simple tools like Tableau, Power BI, or
Correct.
maybe any other commonly used tools to solve these problems. So in that case, also being a non-tech wouldn't be a big deterrent, because if you're using Excel sheet for solving most of these problems, you can also learn one more tool that can solve these problems equally well enough, right?
Correct.
Yeah, probably better in that sense. So thank you, Syam. This was actually a very important insight for all people coming from different walks of life. Friends, please do not post questions here. The questions have been taken from the mails that we have received. So if time permits, we'll pick up your questions at the end. So please don't put it in the chat window right now. Let us focus on the question that we have at hand, and then we'll take up questions if time permits. Okay, now Syam, the next question for you is, since you started very early, if I'm not wrong, you started somewhere in the 2010-11 time, right? When you got into the space.
Yep.
So what was the biggest challenges that you faced back then, and how open was India to data science back then?
Yeah, I would say the biggest challenge for me was the lack of understanding for the senior management, right? So for any of these initiatives, obviously the vision and strategy are pretty important. So that is where the leadership plays a very critical role. And in those days, definitely that was the biggest challenge for me. Okay, especially I was learning. I was in my nascent stage, and therefore I needed a lot of support from my senior management. But obviously, even they are in that same phase, right? So that was one of the biggest challenges. So it was definitely a sort of a trial and error in terms of learning for both the management as well as me. So we have reached out to different business units. For example, we started looking into, let's say, can we focus on marketing analytics, or can we focus on, let's say, customer analytics, right? So we needed to understand where the requirement is, right? So that is where we were exploring a lot of areas and connecting with people. And then how do we proceed? Okay, so that is a challenge, and I would say that is always a challenge, right? Even today, you will still have that problems being faced by solution providers. But however, there is a maturity right now, and therefore it is not as difficult as it was earlier. But the second most challenge, and this is something where we as data scientists, face a lot of challenges in terms of data. Especially if I'm a service provider, okay, then getting data from my customers is a challenging task, because they have to trust us because data is always the critical part for any business unit, right? Their entire details of their running the business lies in that data. Therefore, people are very skeptical about sharing data outside their organizations. Okay, so that is where, as a service provider, it was a challenge for me. Okay, and finally, again, from an execution perspective, infrastructure, okay, is going to be a challenge. Even then, it was a challenge. At least now we have better laptops and all. So back then, it was all about 4 GB RAM machines, right? So processing this kind of data was always difficult, and especially if you are in an IT service organization, okay, and that mindset, right, has to change, because you won't be able to solve these kind of problems using low infrastructure. Okay, so these were all some of the challenges, at least I could really think of immediately.
Awesome. So one thing for sure is we are in a much more better time right now compared to what you started, right?
Correct.
So apart from the lack of data, lack of vision from the leadership, and lack of server or lack of processing power, was there anything else that prominently stands in your way back then?
So like I said, it's more in terms of where do we offer the solutions, right?
Okay.
It's always about adding value. Okay, it's not just for the sake of doing things, right? So ultimately, we should be able to solve business problems.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that is where the challenge was. So
Wow.
identifying the right areas and focusing or narrowing down, right, our focus.
Yeah. So with maturity of this field, today it has become exponentially easier to find how a particular solution can solve a particular business problem. Like now it has become a very common trait, right? That all you have to do is just research around how the world is using data science, and you can apply it in your very same companies as well. Right?
Yeah, so the approaches, probably, yes, you are getting some sort of commonality for sure. But again, it all lies in the data, right? Therefore, if you have any uniqueness to your data, so you should always bring in that custom solutioning. Okay,
Right.
so that is always there, and therefore, so we data scientists are not redundant yet. Even though we are standardizing the processes, I think there is a lot of feature engineering, for example, right, is a major contributor, and that's where we play a role.
Yeah. So it's not that now there's a dearth of knowledge, which was back in your case, it was true that there was not much knowledge available, but today knowledge is plenty. Let's take it up as an umbrella solution, and then once you fit it into your problem statement, you would want to narrow it down based on your data. That's how we should think, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. This makes sense. So let's move on to the next question, which is about what are the best practices? And since you spoke about leadership, right? So you said that leadership is actually very important when it comes to implementing data science, be it in a matured company or be it in a startup. So what are the best practices that you think you would want leaderships to follow to overcome the common challenges that you faced back then? So I know it's a very different time now. The current time is way more rosier than what it was back in your time. So considering most of these things have already evolved, okay, what is your next set of advice to the leaderships, to the people who are going to become leaders of tomorrow?
Sure. So I mean, we just touched upon the strategic challenges that leadership typically faces. Okay, so I'm not going to repeat that right now. So let us focus more on the operational aspects or the execution part of it, right? So the most difficult challenges that leadership will face is about resources, okay, about the teams that they are going to manage. Especially data science is such a hot field, so retaining people has become a very difficult challenge. Okay, and that is one of the, I think, focus areas that every leadership focus on. Okay, because if you are not giving them enough challenges, if you are not giving them the scope for learning, okay, and you might lose them pretty fast. Okay, money alone will not retain people. Obviously, we need to look at the softer aspects of these various elements and in team management, and that is where I think leadership should definitely focus on. Okay, that is one element. And second element is again knowledge management. right? Especially it is very important in data science because, like we discussed, you will solve various kinds of problems, right? It's the problems that you are solving. It could be from all the way from optimization. It could be from, domain specific areas like marketing analytics or supply chain analytics, or it could be, very technical focused. Let's say something you are developing using deep learning. So there are wider aspects in terms of technical, in terms of domain, right? So and everything is evolving. Therefore knowledge management is very critical. If you lose the people, if you lose the expertise that you developed within your organization, okay, then it becomes really challenging. And finally, the third element I would say, data science is again field. It's very different from, let's say, typical IT solutioning, right? So in IT solutions, you know where to start and probably you know where to end. But data science is more of an R&D field, okay? So therefore, if a problem comes to you, you should by that time already have some picture in terms of how do you want to proceed, okay? That is the reason why I think leadership focus on developing accelerators, okay? Like one typical example could be if you want to retrieve information from let's say text documents, right? So you should already know how to do that before actually solving the problems, right? So that is where you should already have some accelerators in place, okay? I think these are all some of the operational elements that I would say that leadership should focus on. And of course strategic issues we just discussed, right? It's all about vision, direction, right? In what areas you want to solve the problems, and definitely what kind of technical trends or the industry is moving on, okay? That all I think leadership should be aware of, certainly.
Okay, so few if I want to kind of extract few of the important pointers here, what I understand is there is a technical difference between leaders in IT and leaders in data science. So leaders in IT may not be ones who really want to dig deep into the aspects of whatever technology they are following, whatever projects, the technicalities of the project in some sense. But leaders in data science are expected to talk data science, are expected to understand data science, are expected to kind of communicate well enough with the data scientists so that they can pose up difficult challenges that keep them motivated, right?
Correct.
So leaders in data science have to be educated enough in the data science space, right?
Sure.
So if I could just narrow it down in one line, make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. So thanks a lot. This is actually a pretty important insight for all of us. How do you kind of so since this is very relevant to your time, so back in your time, today it's not very difficult, but still there's a lot of difficulty, there's a lot of friction. But if I were to talk back in your days, which we can learn from, how were you able to convince your stakeholders or management to kind of take up certain data science solutions, some solutions which backed on data science? How did you convince them?
Okay. Yeah, it's a tough question to answer, really. Because I mean, when we look at the kind of people that we see, right? Typically, what I observed, there will be some non-believers. Okay, that means they definitely don't think that data science is going to add any value. Okay, experience is what matters. Okay, so it's very tough if you have such people in your leadership. Okay, then all the best to you. We can't do much with those kind of people, but luckily right now, at least what I can see is that nobody is in that state. Okay, because for whatever reasons, leadership definitely supports the AI initiatives. Okay, so in that sense, I think at least right now the we are in a good shape. But then there are also second set of people that if you see, probably people who are confused. So they are not non-believers, but probably they don't understand, right? I think this is where we have to help them, or rather, I mean, at least we have to partner with our leadership as well. Okay, so when people are confused, really, I think the only way that we can do is how to show the results, right? That is always the best way to make progression. So probably take baby steps in terms of, obviously you cannot solve bigger problems straight away. Okay, so that is the reason why probably take some solutions that you can solve, low hanging fruits, right? That's what we try to find out in the earlier stages. So for example, right now if you see, virtual agents or the chatbots, okay, are showing pretty great results. Okay, so you don't need to therefore convince a lot your management. Okay, so let's identify those areas which are already proven or which are right in production right now. Okay, that is where you can start your baby steps, and then right, move on, okay, very quickly. But obviously there are a lot of industry examples right now available. Okay, so that is what I think we should keep a tab on, and definitely these are something we should discuss right internally and brainstorm how these solutions are possible. When somebody is publishing, let's say the white papers or research papers, they are all proof enough for us that we have results, right, shown in this field. So I think that is where we should focus on, and then let us map it to the business problems that our customers are facing. Okay, and I think that is the way to move forward, I would say.
Awesome. So, yeah, I think it does make a lot of sense. So it is all about, if I narrow it down to one line, it's about take baby steps into the world. Right?
Correct.
Then it is, you'll find lesser friction. You'll find the management more aligned to you. When you're targeting low-hanging fruits, there's not much that the management has to lose, so they'll not be too deterrent about implementing these solutions.
Correct.
So yeah, I think that is a very important insight for us, that we should take baby steps when we are trying to push AI or data science into our culture. It has to be the culture of the company, and that only comes when you kind of do it in a small and bits, in small bits, and that's how you can kind of change the culture as a whole. Thank you, Syam. I think this is very important. Thank you. Moving on to the next one. I think part of it you already answered it, but let's say there would be people from different backgrounds who are already ready. They're already ready. They've taken this call that yes, it's high time. I want to move into data science. Now, apart from the education front that you already suggested, that stats is something that you should know. Apart from this, what are the other behavioral traits that you might want to recommend them? Something like in lines of the effort that they're supposed to put, the consistency that they should have, and what is the level of depth of research that they're supposed to do in terms of like researching blogs, researching papers, websites. So what would be your suggestion here?
Yeah, definitely. When you say behavioral aspects, I would say persistence and patience, right? And a lot of self-learning. Okay, so you should focus on these aspects. Okay, especially when if you are a senior person, for example, what is expected from you is not just about coding, right? That you should be able to think innovatively. You should be able to come up with solution approaches, for example. So therefore, reading through a lot of content is essential. And again, when I say it's not just about blogs, right? Probably you should also go through some research papers, see what is happening in these data science field, okay? Because coming up with approaches is not an easier task, okay? And one of the key things that we all should understand, and I'm sure I think you already have sensed it, is that this is not a linear path, right? When we are talking about a data science solutioning, it's not a linear path. This is definitely an R&D field, okay? And therefore, a lot of iterations, right? And a lot of ideation is needed, and a lot of hypothesizing. And more importantly, don't lose hope or don't disheartened if you don't get solutions, because in R&D activities, you are not going to get the solution upfront straight away. And sometimes probably there may not be a solution with the given constraints, right? With the given data. And therefore you should have these aspects in mind, okay? You're not going to get a solution in one single shot. Put a lot of hard work, always be learning, right? And keep iterating. And more importantly is think innovative, right? These are, I think, some of the aspects we should all inculcate. And I'm sure, right, with effort and dedication, we all will master that.
Awesome. So yeah, I think it's more of a research mindset that we got to have. We are not trying to solve a certain equation that you put the values and you get the answer.
Correct.
We're trying to work it out. We're trying to do a continuous improvement over what we did the last time, and eventually become as close as possible to the right answer, though we may never land on the right answer. Right?
Correct.
Thank you. So this is pretty important. Thank you. Now moving on to the next one. What are the materials that you follow? So this will kind of narrow down to your perspective. What are the things that you follow to keep yourself updated?
Okay. Yeah, I think right now there is no dearth of information, right? So we have so much information available, especially free, and therefore it's a matter of spending time. And luckily for me, I think I already have a network of people. Okay, that is the most important thing. So develop your network. Okay, especially people who are experienced. If they are within your group, I think it becomes much easier for you to learn, right? So for example, within our organization, so we are all connected on WhatsApp, right? Very simple. But what is interesting is everybody keeps on posting something new. Okay, so I mean, so it becomes really difficult for me to go through all the content or catch up with some of those aspects. But that is the best way to learn, right? What is happening currently, and in fact, what are the futuristic things that are coming up, and we all can learn from each other. Okay, so that is where please be connected with people. Okay, and you will have, let's say, within this group, I believe, I think you will definitely form a group, right? So therefore be in touch even after the course, right? And keep informing each other, and be connected on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is a great source because a lot of experienced people, they share the content, right? Even if they are not writing, they will definitely share or point you to the right locations. So keep updated yourself. Okay, and I think that's good. And of course you have blogs that you can subscribe, so therefore you will automatically get feeds and all, right? So all of these sources are pretty good. I mean, many people in fact write the all the end-to-end solutions, right, on the blogs. So you going through them is very, very important. Okay, so the blogs are no longer just chit chats. Okay, a lot of information is coming through these blogs, therefore be connected with them. Okay.
Awesome. And any specific blog that you would like to recommend? Something like a Medium or probably
Yes,
data.
yes. Medium is definitely good, right? I find it very, very important and very interesting. A lot of things I learn from Medium. Okay, and for that matter, even though some people right see it lightly, even analytics vidya, right, for beginners is very good. A lot of right important things you learn from there. Okay,
Awesome.
yeah.
And how
And
about KD Nuggets?
sorry.
KD Nuggets. Do you follow KD Nuggets?
KD Nuggets, and then Kaggle. Kaggle, of course. I mean, I think everybody should look into that. Okay, irrespective of whether you're doing hands-on or not, you will learn a lot from Kaggle, right? Look at the competitions. Even if you're not participating, just looking at the business, the problem itself will give you a very good idea in terms of what all problems are being solved. And these are all right, real-time problems, right? Actually, companies are paying people to solve these problems. So they are real problems. Okay. Therefore, please go through those Kaggle competitions. Okay.
Awesome. But tell me one thing. I mean, if I start fresh into this field, I'm a newbie out here. Uh, I know Medium is a good blog. Antiswitha is a good blog. Quora is a good place to see microblogs. Uh, KD Nuggets is a great place. Where do I start? I mean, I'm a little lost with so much of information. So, what is the right approach to this?
So again, I mean, right now, if we focus on, let's say, about people who would who would like to get hands-on, let's say, then I would always recommend Kaggle for them. Okay, please start there. Okay, especially because you will not only see the code, but you will also go through the approaches that people are talking about, and what kind of insights they are right deriving out of this data. Okay, even if you are not doing any coding there, just go through the approaches. That will give you a better picture. So that is what I would recommend for at least people with lesser experience, let's say below maybe 9 years, 8 years. Definitely you should look at Kaggle as a starting point. Okay, but for experienced people, I think they should have a better understanding of these entire end-to-end solutions, right? How the solutions are being applied, what are the latest things that are coming up, and in terms of what kind of business problems are solved, right? That is where they should focus more on. And definitely there for them, therefore, is all these other sources are important. Medium and all, I think would focus more on probably the technical solutioning aspects. And therefore, I would suggest that you also focus more on the business domain perspective aspects. Okay. That's what I would recommend for experienced people.
Yeah, I think that is good. I mean, we can probably start by learning from others and not by kind of breaking ahead. What should I do in such a case, right?
Yep.
Develop a certain level of maturity, and then you start solving problems by yourself. So even in this also, we do have a lot of challenges where there is so much of information even on Kaggle. But yeah, what I can definitely see here is if I were a starter, I would have not really got bogged down with tons of information. I'll see some part of it which I can make sense, and over a period, as my knowledge grows in data science, the other parts will start making sense. Does that make? I mean, is that statement right?
Yeah, that is correct. So let's say again within this experience levels, right? I think below 6 years, probably you would focus more on programming aspects, getting hands-on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you would try to get probably as much wider technical expertise as possible. Okay,
Right.
but people then who are getting more experience, I think they should focus on specialization. So like you said, then I think you narrow down. Let's say you want to focus either on a business domain perspective, let's say customer analytics or marketing analytics. So that is one business domain specific specialization. Or from a technical point of view, let's say you specialize in maybe outlier detection or anomaly detections, right? Or specialize in deep learning, NLP, like that. Okay. So that is another way to narrow down your approach and then focus more. Okay.
Absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense because when you're young, you would like to understand the nitty-gritties of the technical part of it. And probably once you get experience, you know what kind of problems you usually would like to solve. Once you are already in the industry for 10 years, you know the domain well enough. You know that, yeah, probably I'm interested in fraud detection. So probably I can narrow down my search to fraud detection. Thank you. I think that's a great value add for all of us, especially if a lot of people are starting fresh in this field, and which a lot of our audience is actually. So yeah, a lot of people will ask, what is the job market in Kanpur? What is the job market in Kolkata? What is the job market in 100 places? But let's generalize it for India because obviously we can't really dig into every city in India and talk. Let's generalize it for India and help us understand how's the job market in India currently and what the future. How does the future really look like?
Yeah, market is pretty good. Okay. There is no doubt about it, and I think you can just look into Naukri alone, right? Just look at that, and you'll see how many number of postings are there every day. Okay, so marketing pretty hard, especially if you look at cities, major cities right now like Bangalore, Delhi, and all. It's phenomenal. I mean, the companies are struggling to retain people. Okay, that's how good it is. But again, having said that, so don't take it as if you're given with a platter. Okay, obviously that hard work has to come in. So because making entry into this field is always going to be the major hurdle for a lot of us, right? Once you make entry into that, I think then it is always a smooth sail. Okay, so you have to cross that first hurdle, and therefore definitely spend effort and a lot of learning, right, to make that breakthrough. But don't worry about jobs. I think this is where the industry is moving forward, and therefore it's going to stay. Okay, so don't worry about it. This is not just a hype. I think it's a good field to be in right now. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think these are like the IT transitions that we have been observing. In 90s, we saw the first boom of IT. Again, in late 2000, we saw the big data era. And now we are seeing the AI era. So obviously the era, they last for a lot of years. And this era is very promising. It's going to stay more than a decade probably. It's going to last forever if I'm not wrong.
Right.
So, yeah, so this is going to be a continuously improving era, and we are glad to be kind of a part of it in our careers right now. Okay, I think this part we kind of addressed it mildly in the previous question. Let's skip this question because I think this was already kind of addressed in your previous answers itself. So I'll move to the next one, which is around where do you see Indian companies using AI and ML in the next 5 years? So how do you think Indian companies are going to evolve? Now, currently, if I were to kind of generalize the idea, apart from startups, I don't see major companies really doing cutting edge stuffs in AI or deep learning or even in machine learning in that sense. Since you have worked with really big companies, where do you think these big companies would be in the next 5 years in this domain?
Yeah, so when we talk about the Indian market, right, we should look at them from four different angles. Okay, one is the service providers. Again, within these service providers, we have the typical IT service providers, but then there are also niche players like let's say music and all. Okay, then the second set of companies that you see, they're all product companies. Okay, and you mentioned about startups anyway, but then there are also different product companies, right? And the third set is the captive centers, where the organization, let's say across the world, probably they are opening their centers in India for their own consumptions, right? So we have these captive centers, and then of course the typical business units within India, like for example L&T and all. Okay, so if we look at these four elements, so service providers are already there, okay, but their focus will always be in terms of catering to the specific needs of the companies. But having said that, what I'm observing, right, as part of the my current organization also, a lot of customers are now coming up with a requirement to build platforms. Okay, so it's no longer about developing just a point solution. Okay, so a lot of organizations are moving towards building their own platforms, and that is where I think people coming with IT background, especially senior folks, I think have a good prospects there, because you need people who can architect the end-to-end platforms, who can manage the delivery of this end-to-end platform buildings. Okay, so that is where the industry is moving right now. Okay, as I said earlier, the companies, I think a lot of companies have been maturing right now. There has been so much R&D in this space, and people have been building POCs, but they are seeing results right now, and they are getting confidence in this field. So a lot of companies want to productionize the solutions, right? So that is where all these different aspects are becoming critical. For example, now testing in AI itself is becoming a different field altogether. Then how do you adopt agile in the context of data science, right? Again, agile itself is a different strategy, but within now AI is going to be much more different. Then in terms of the entire product management, platform management, architecting the solution, so all of these things are where the organizations are moving in. And of course we spoke about captive centers, and I think you made a statement that probably companies are still in the nascent stage. But what I would say, I think this maturity is different across industries. Okay, for example, banking, I think they are already ahead of the game. Okay, they have made significant progress, and a lot of captive centers in India, especially in banking industry, if you see, they have a pretty good data science implementations already. So the maturity is different across the industries, but certainly captive centers are, I would say, ahead of the game, for the simple reason that they own the data, right? They don't have to depend on anybody else, right? For service providers, that is one of the most difficult challenges. Like I said earlier, getting data from customers is always a difficult thing. But for captive companies, they own the data, and therefore that becomes much more easier. And coming to these Indian specific organizations, like say, for example, I mentioned about L&T right now, right? So I have been hearing a lot that all of these have started setting up COEs now in data science. Like for example, in Hyderabad, I heard that Dr. Reddy's is coming up with a COE, right? So I think so companies have started investing in data science. Okay, it's no longer a nascent state, I would say. I think everybody wants to be part of the race now. It's a very interesting period right now.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, what you said is true. It does vary depending on what kind of company, what kind of work they're doing. Especially, I think what is really exciting about this field right now is startups are working at like left, right, center. They are coming up with so much of innovative solutions, which probably even abroad a lot of companies are not doing. But two countries that we would definitely want to kind of learn from is US and China. Especially China, the way they have changed the entire ecosystem. They've actually literally changed the entire ecosystem, and the entire country is running on AI right now. So a lot of things to learn from them as well. So thank you, Syam. I think that adds a lot of value. Let's move on to a little more, I would say, narrowed down version of questionnaires. This is more oriented to our participants. It's about you as a manager, you might be receiving a lot of resumes. Can you quickly walk us through the most common mistakes that people do on the resumes?
Okay, sure. I think you have a lot of guidance in terms of writing the resume. So first, I would recommend that just go through LinkedIn, right? You will get a lot of guidance on how to write resumes. But very specific to data science, if we see, typically what I observe is people tend to fill up with a lot of jargon, right? These resumes, especially they try to pour in all known techniques possible, right? Within the one page of document. Okay, but I would recommend, so while it is important that you showcase the knowledge that you have, focus more on in terms of how you contributed to the project, right? Especially what is the innovation you brought to this project, what kind of feature engineering you have done, for example, or how did you manage the delivery of the project, and what kind of challenges you faced. I think these are some of the aspects that would interest people rather than just mentioning some names. And the biggest challenge is, if you are not comfortable and you still put in those words, definitely, right, that is a troublesome that will lead you to problems. Okay, especially if I were there, I would go word by word what is there in resume. Okay, and I will focus only on that, whatever you put in there. Okay, so then that becomes a challenge, right? So therefore, I would suggest you highlight the contribution that you have made, and also in terms of how you solve the problem and what is the value add, right, out of this data science solution. Okay, I think that is what you should focus more on, especially talk about the end-to-end solution approach. So what is the business case that you are solving, and what is the data engineering part of that you have done? Okay, and what is the innovative ideas that you brought into the solution? And finally, of course, you talk about the results. Okay, and again, I mean, you don't have to write too much content there. If you write too much, then there will be nothing to talk in the interview, right? So just give the hints to grab the attention of the reviewer. Okay, and then that should guide you further to the discussion, whatever you want to comfortably discuss with the interviewer, right? That is what you should highlight in your resume.
Awesome. Yeah. I think this totally makes sense. And this applies, I think, universally to probably every field, that jargons are not welcome from the recruiter's perspective. A lot of people are under the misconception that you write a lot of jargon, they'll think you're out of the world, you know a lot of stuff. But when it comes to actually explaining in the interview, people falter. So I think, Syam, I would also agree on this point that yes, jargons do not help. Let's take a small use case here. I'm new to data science. I've never done data science before in my life. I learned it. Now, there's nothing practical that I can write on my resume regarding for which customer I solved a certain $1 billion problem. I have nothing to write on that. But could it be wise of me to kind of just rethink the idea and probably apply data science at work and solve a problem which is not necessarily for what the client is paying? I could probably solve a problem and say that I suggested a POC here. Does that really add value?
Certainly. Yeah, definitely bring in that innovation, right? That is definitely important. But more importantly, are you adding value, right? If it is a customer problem that you are solving, definitely it's a welcome, right? Everybody wants to see what is the value add there. And then when you talk about innovation, people love it, right? Because if you can think differently, that is all needed in data science. Okay, learning a regression or learning some deep learning, these are all matter of spending time. That is anybody will master. Okay, but what is important is this is like tools, right? I mean, you have the knife, you know how to cut it, but the important point is when to cut and how to cut, right? This is what adds value, and that is where I think our contribution will be. Okay, so bring that innovation.
So it's not that there has to be a $2 million project approved by the client, then only you can write it on your resume. If you have gotten any change within your system, that also accounts for a good hands-on experience of data science.
Correct.
Awesome. Yeah, I think this addresses the question of a lot of people who feel that they actually have to do a client project to do data science. That is probably the biggest misconception that I would say. Data science can be used for optimization within your company. You don't have to think outside. Charity can start at home itself. So thank you, Syam. I think that really validates our thought process here. Moving to the next one, if members of the cohort were interested to apply to your company, so what is your recommendation? Like, how do they go about it? And I hope they don't write jargon and the resume reaches you.
Sure. That is a good start, and definitely right. And not only Accenture, any organization right now. See, I think the best place or to begin with, they have the job portals. Even right now, if you go and go to the Accenture career page and just search for machine learning or data scientist, you will see at least 200 plus requirements there. Okay, yesterday I just tried that, and I could see that there are almost 200 positions at different levels. Okay, but so the point is that you look at the career portals for organizations, and a lot of these organizations, even though there is no immediate requirement, definitely right, your profile will always be there, and whenever there is a fitment, they will definitely approach you. And I have seen scenarios where people joined Accenture that way. Okay, so I would say look at the career portal right now. And then I also see a lot of ads from Accenture on LinkedIn. Okay, therefore LinkedIn is also definitely a great source for you, where job postings are directly right posted there. So look at that. And third, of course, the network always helps, right? If you have people within Accenture, and we do have a sort of a recommendation system, right? So always within employees within the organization, they can recommend people. Okay, so have those connects in place. And again, this is not just for Accenture, for any organization, right? This applies. Okay, so yeah, please do that definitely. And yeah, and I wish definitely you will make a breakthrough.
Awesome. So good to see that there are like plenty of opportunities at Accenture itself. And apart from Accenture, if you go to LinkedIn, there's probably millions of such opportunities out there. But obviously, friends, please do not apply without being prepared enough. So see what the companies require. The companies will post their JD. What are the bare minimum that they need? At least be good enough in those points and then apply. That makes the application process more smooth, and your conversion rate also goes higher. So thank you for that, Syam. So Syam, I think I've actually crossed your time. It was supposed to be a 45-minute session. We are almost an hour now. Sorry for that. For the parting tips. So let's kind of narrow it down here. We'll just wrap it up for today here with your last parting tips for all the folks who are coming from different walks of life, trying to get into data science and AI. Any parting tips that you want to share with them?
Well, I think we already discussed, so let me just summarize, right? For me, the top 3 points that if I wanted to say, please be patient, okay? Don't lose hope. It takes some time, especially because you are making a career change here. That is what everybody is planning, right? So in that sense, don't lose hope, right? You keep trying, definitely you will make a breakthrough. But at the meantime, right, don't waste this time. I think leverage this time, whatever you have, to continuously learn and upgrade. Okay, there is no right replacement for the hard work. So please do that. And more importantly, as Sanjeet said, I think what you should keep a tab on is the market requirements. Okay, so don't try to apply everywhere and for every kind of job. Okay, so narrow down to the job requirements that match your current experience, especially if you have more number of years of experience. I think it is always helps if you can connect with your current experience, right? Like for example, if you are in testing, then from testing probably can you make a transition to AI testing? Okay, that is much more useful, and probably you will have a better fit, right? So do that evaluation and look at the market, and then okay, prepare yourself. Okay, don't try to apply everywhere. Just narrow down your focus and what are the preference areas and your positives, and then accordingly you apply. Okay, I think these are the 3 things I would like to highlight.
Okay, so I've just expanded on the 3 and I've added 2 more points which probably you would agree that this could also be beneficial. First is patience, not losing hope when things are down and out. Since it's a huge field, we oftentimes get a little deviated, a little distracted. But being patient helps us overcome that challenge. Second is time is essence. We really can't afford to miss out on the time that we have at hand today, because this is a golden period for data science. If we can't kind of move into data science as soon as possible, it'll only become all the more bleaker in future. Third thing is connect with our current experience. If I am working as a developer, how can I move as a developer to data science? If I'm working as a tester, how can I move into data science as a tester? So what are the connected roles in AI or data science? Fourth one is networking with people. Networking really kind of opens up a lot of avenues, not only from job perspective, but from knowledge perspective. And finally, it's best to prepare as per the requirement of the company that matches to your strengths. So instead of kind of running behind every possible company, sending resumes to every possible person on this planet, the easier way out is see what are your strengths and see which company aligns well with your strengths and apply to those, narrow down to those and then apply. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Syam. So I think, friends, we will stop here for the day. Can we all give a big thank you to Syam for his time that he shared with us today? It was a very important session from the perspective of everybody. Be it a fresher, be it an experienced person. Syam, you shared a lot of valuable insights. I do not want to distract anybody, so I had switched on my camera. But let me just open up my camera so that we can see each other now. So thank you, Syam. Thank you. Thanks a lot for the time that you spent with us and the knowledge that you shared with us. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thanks again. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's our pleasure. And if you see, the thank yous have been flowing on the chat window. So a lot of people are really happy to have learned from you. Thanks a lot, Syam.
So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, friends. You may all terminate your sessions. We are done for the day. And I hope all of you take these 5 important insights that Syam has shared with us today. Please work on it. Please do not miss out on these bare bones of changing or transitioning your career into data science. Thanks a lot. See you.
Bye.